What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Super Console Arcade from KInHank. So basically what this is an all-in-one retro console with HDMI out, but the arcade stick itself can be connected to the Switch, the PS4, the PS3, PC, Android, and the Raspberry Pi, so it does work with Linux and Windows. There's a few different modes here, like X input and D input, so you can swap it over from your PC to your PS4 and play your favorite fighting games with a fight stick. But I think the main draw to this would be the all-in-one console aspect of the whole unit itself. So let's go ahead and get this out of the box. We do get a few accessories with it, but I'm really interested to see what kind of CPU this thing's running. Now I know it's an all-in-one console with HDMI out. It does have USB in, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and of course the arcade control panel up top here. We've got a single stick and a round back. As you can see, here's all of our outputs and inputs. Definitely has a little bit of weight to it, and usually with these arcade sticks they do put a little steel plate inside. We'll do a disassembly just to check everything out, but it feels really sturdy the way it sits. So inside of the box we're going to get our HDMI cable. We have a USB Type-C cable, a USB Type-C to full-size USB adapter, our power supply, and of course the arcade stick itself. So up top here we do have a few little LED indicators, our mode button. This does support turbo, so we've got our turbo button up here, dedicated start and select. Obviously we've got the arcade stick itself, A, B, X, Y, and we've got 6 other action buttons that we can map to basically anything depending on what you're running this with. Checking out the bottom here, we do have some pretty hefty rubber feet, so this isn't going to go anywhere on the table, and like I mentioned, it does have some weight to it, but I want to pull this apart just to check out the internals and see if it would be easy enough to upgrade the stick and the buttons to real Sanwa hardware. So I've got everything pulled apart. It was easy enough to do. I did have to remove the rubber feet to get to the screws in the bottom, and I would recommend heating these up a little bit just so you can keep that glue. But we've got that steel plate in the bottom to keep the weight up on this arcade stick so it doesn't slide around on the table. We've got our main board right here with a CPU right on that heatsink. Definitely looks like a little Android box, and usually when it comes to the Super consoles, these are running something like an Amlogic S905, so we'll have to take a look in the settings. And when it comes to the arcade hardware itself, this would be really easy to upgrade to real Sanwa buttons and a stick. Or you could just swap out this 4-way gate for an 8-way gate on the joystick itself and be totally fine playing it like it is. I've used a lot of these clone buttons. I've really never run into an issue in the past. They're cheap, easy to replace, but just note that all the connections are correct to add Sanwa hardware. So let's go ahead and get this booted up for the first time. Really easy to do. I've just got HDMI and the power cable plugged in. We've got a physical power button on the rear. Got our LED indicators over here, and it's going to boot right up. I mean, this is kind of the best part about these all-in-one systems. Very easy to use, and when it comes to the operating system, if you're used to using Emulation Station, then you're not going to have any issues. But remember, if you pull the SD card out of this, we do have an Android operating system. It's really not optimized to use the stick itself, but we've got that full-size USB on the rear. You could plug a mouse into it and use it if you wanted to. And here it is, ready to go. We've got the basic Emulation Station carbon theme going here. It is the dark carbon theme, but it's easy enough to change it. There are a few preloaded, or you could connect to Wi-Fi or over Ethernet and download more. One of my favorites is this one here. I just think it looks absolutely amazing. And of course, since our controller is an arcade stick, one of the main things that I would do is just play arcade games, mainly fighting games, some shooters, some beat 'em ups, but if you wanted to play some platformers, you could always get away with doing it on an arcade stick. I'm personally not big on that, so I'll go with the arcade stuff, and we're going to jump right into it with one of my favorite Neo Geo games, Blazing Star. I've got artwork for each one of these games, and once this loads up, it actually has bezels pre-installed, so it does look really good. And we'll jump right into some gaming. I do want to test this turbo button out, but you know, with a game like Blazing Star, it might not work out very well because the button itself can be held down to charge up your power, or it could be tapped rapidly to change your fire pattern. So with turbo on, I'm not exactly sure how turbo it is. It might just automatically hold that button down and charge it. We will test it again with another system, but yeah, I mean, with the hardware we have here, Neo Geo, FBA, CPS 1, 2, 3, we shouldn't have any issues at all with it. And yeah, just as I thought with at least Blazing Star, that turbo button is still just going to hold it down. I'll find another game that it'll be a lot easier to use that turbo button with next. Real quick, I wanted to show you how to set this turbo button up. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it with a lot of games, but it's easy to use. You're going to hold the turbo button, press the button you want to activate turbo with, and it's activated. We've got this light over here. To deactivate it, again, hold turbo, press that button, and you're good to go. I also wanted to test a higher end emulator on this hardware, and here we have a Thomas Wave. This is using RetroArch with the Flycast core. It's definitely not horrible, but I do get a few audio issues here and there. But that's kind of a given for the hardware used in this stick, because basically what we have is the same hardware that comes in the Super Console, and that just happens to be the Amlogic S905L. It's actually the revision 3 that we have here. 4 cores up to 1.9 gigahertz. We've got a Mali 450 GPU up to 750 megahertz, and I actually can't find any information on the RAM variant we have here, but it's either 1 or 2. And you can opt to pick this up with a 64GB SD card or a 256GB SD card. The next thing I wanted to test out was just the usability of the stick itself in fighting games, because when it comes to using a stick with fighting games, you want something that definitely works, and you want it to work every single time. I'm here with Marvel vs. Capcom, but we've got Ryu and Dan, and I'm just pulling off some of these special moves. Not bad at all, and like I mentioned at the beginning, I've used a lot of these no-name sticks and buttons, and I've never had an issue with the actual hardware itself. It really comes down to the encoder, and the encoder they're using here works really well. And the last thing I wanted to do was just test it as an actual arcade stick. I opted to use one of my Windows PCs, but this also works with the Switch, PS3, PS4, and the Raspberry Pi. As soon as I plug it in, it's detected by Windows. We can go into the controller setup. And as you can see, all the buttons are working. It's detected as a KInHank 6-axis controller. So this will work with PC games. Right now it's actually running in X input mode, so it's great for your Steam games and things like that. It'll also work with basically any emulator on Windows. So here we have Redream. Get that turbo button working here. Definitely going to be cheating in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, so I'll disable it. And with this, I didn't have to do any setup in the Redream emulator because it's connected to the PC as X input. It's basically going to use the same kind of setup as an Xbox 360 controller, which a lot of these emulators nowadays are already mapped ready to go. Another awesome system that this thing can handle just fine is Open Bore, or Open Beats of Rage. Basically, these are community-made beat-em-ups, and there's some really awesome stuff. We've got some Sailor Moon, some Rocko's Modern Life, there's a lot of Ninja Turtle stuff out there, Power Rangers. If you can think of it, it's probably been made in Open Beats of Rage. But one I've been enjoying lately is The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. I did go into the settings and turn the music off because it's Simpsons music throughout the game. But as you can see, we've got Homer, Krusty, and Alberto to choose from. The game looks really good and plays very, very nicely. Like I mentioned, I did turn the music off. It's much more enjoyable with that music going. But the animations look great. I mean, the artwork itself looks really awesome. But it's a really fun game, and if you enjoyed the Simpsons arcade game, you're going to love this. I also wanted to give you a quick look at the Rocko's Modern Life one. The artwork here is really awesome. So yeah, for what the Super Arcade console is, it does work really well. For the lower end stuff, you're going to be good to go. You want to do some Neo Geo, some PC Engine, you got some CPS 1, 2, it'll even handle CPS 3. It also has PS1 covered, but when it comes to the high-end, harder to emulate PSP and Dreamcast games, it's just not going to cut it. But there's still a lot of games that will be playable on this unit, especially the fighting games. I was really hoping to see a higher-end CPU in this thing so we could get some more of the 3D games out of the way. But, you know, when it comes down to it, this is really made for the older fighting games. 2D fighting games, you got some shoot 'em ups, you got some beat 'em ups, and there's a ton of them that this thing can run at full speed, but it's not a high-end emulation console by any means. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Really appreciate you watching. If you're interested in learning more about the Super Console Arcade, I will leave a few links in the description. If you want to see anything else running on this unit, just let me know in the comments below. But like always, thanks for watching.